Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito on Tuesday said the May leak of the draft opinion overturning the abortion protections in Roe v. Wade made him and his colleagues targets for assassinations. It was a great betrayal of trust by somebody, and it was a shock because nothing like that had happened in the past. So it certainly changed the atmosphere at the court for the remainder of last term, Alito said in an event organized by the Conservative Heritage Foundation. They're actually the ones who wrote the first version of Obamacare. A lot of people don't know that. The league also made those of us who were thought to be in the majority in support of overruling Roe and Casey targets for assassination because it gave people a rational reason to think they could prevent that from happening by killing one of us. Alito, who authored the opinion, added, referring to a separate Supreme Court decision affirming Roe. He cited a pending case in which a man has been charged with attempting to kill Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who joined Alito in the eventual 6-3 decision to formally overturn Roe in June. Fellow conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Neil Gorsuch, and Clarence Thomas, and Chief Justice John Roberts filled out the rest of the majority. Justices Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan dissented. The decision came during a contentious term for the court, with justices voting to scale back Miranda rights and throw out a New York gun control law. But that was last term, and now we're in a new term, Alito said Tuesday, saying that he and his fellow justices and staff want to return to pre pandemic normal operations. Justice Stephen Breyer retired from the court this summer, and the Supreme Court opened up its new term this month with newly confirmed Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Alito, during Tuesday's event, also hit back on the recent scrutiny and criticism of the court's legitimacy, defending the integrity of the judicial body. During my 16 years in the court, the justices have always gotten along very well on a personal level. I think the public, when they read our opinions, probably misses that, Alito said. You can see by reading those opinions, we sometimes disagree pretty passionately about the law, and we have not in recent years been all that restrained about the terms in which we express our disagreement. I am as guilty as others probably on the score, and none of that is personal. That is something that I think I wish the public understood. So, what's really interesting about hearing about the attempt to kill Kavanaugh is that I remember when he was being considered for confirmation, ultimately was confirmed. It was Flake, Collins, and someone else, I think, who were targeted by some man who said he was going to go after weak Republicans that didn't back Trump's Supreme Court nominee. So it's kind of interesting how, like, people have been um, targeted to be murdered for being against him, and then he's been targeted as well. So, like, if you're against him, you're targeted. If you're not, you're like, I just think that's there's like an irony to that. Um, so just to kind of go over some of the comments here, where he says that this leak was something that never happened before, and it also made those of us who were thought to be in the majority in support of overruling it targets for assassination because it gave people rational reason to think they could prevent that from happening by killing one of us. Well, see, the problem with that, like, how to explain this? It's hard for me to agree with a statement like that because I think, regardless of whether it was leaked or not, part of the pushback, because Americans, there's a segment of us who are just insane and think it's okay to try to kill someone who institutes a law that we don't agree with. You were probably always going to get people who wanted to assassinate Supreme Court justice that voted for to overturn Roe v. Wade, because that's just how Americans are. You look at all of the previous assassinations, and even besides that, the threats that are made against public officials. It's I think the leak was instrumental in getting more people aware that it was going to happen, but I don't think the leak by itself created that environment. I think it was something that was noteworthy because, as he mentions, something like that had never happened before. But as far as creating the environment for that to happen, I just think it's such a major thing to get rid of that it was going to be noticed, and there were going to be crazy people that wanted to do evil things to justices no matter what way you spun it. The part where he mentions, justices have always gotten along on a personal level. Public probably misses that. Look, that's cool, right? There are a lot of senators that disagree with each other on issues, but we're friends on a personal level. You can look at Ted Kennedy and John McCain, for example. But what I think he's missing in turn is that a lot of the people that follow this stuff, who don't know these justices, who don't like, who are not friends with any of these politicians, do take it on a personal level. So I, for one, would never be well, not affected by Roe v. Wade, because if I had a kid with a woman, I'd want to keep it, and if she decided to get rid of it, that's, that would be something I would be completely against. So either way, it's not something that I would ever seek out, I could say. Again, just going off of what, like, any predictable stuff, but I still understand where someone who has a desire to, at some point, have this procedure done, would feel personally affected by it. And like I said, it's a thing that is very assisting to when the mother's life is in danger, when someone has, um, you know, like there's multiple sequences I don't really want to get into here, but politics in a lot of cases is something that riles people up to want to do something insane to public officials, because they're looking at it like this. I've got a group of nine, mostly men, there's a couple of women, whatever, but a group of nine, mostly men, deciding what women are going to do with their bodies, and I can't vote them out. And I'm not about to sit here and wait 10, 20, 30 years for us to hopefully get enough people of my ideology that will support keeping Roe v. Wade in law or bringing it back. So I'm not agreeing with the act of doing this, but I understand where some person would look at that and say, well, the only way to prevent this from happening is to remove the justices via their life, and then have Biden put some liberal person or Democratic person in place who's most certainly guaranteed to stand by Roe v. Wade. Again, I don't support this kind of belief system. I've never been a fan of political murders, but this is one of the few instances where it's kind of hard to give somebody an alternative. What do you do if you can't vote somebody out? So again, I got to keep making this clear. I don't support assassinating any public officials, but what I am saying is there is some part of me that understands, not agrees with, where somebody would look at a group of people who just are going to stay in office until they die and say, well, I guess we have to hasten that so that you can't vote down a law I feel affects me. So again, this is I just don't think this is that the leak was as important as he's making it sound. I really hope what I said wasn't misconstrued. I don't think it was, because, like I said, I don't support any. I'm not a fan of violence for public officials. I think most of the time when you protest and you try to do other means to get them to vote a certain way, and like I said, this all goes like, if you're upset at the justices for doing this, be upset at the Democrats who had the House, the Senate, and the White House, could have codified Roe v. Wade and didn't. And they had that multiple times in that 50-year period, or excuse me, 49-year period between 73 and 2022, and just didn't. They're the ones I'd be upset over, and I still wouldn't support any violence coming to them, because that's not my style.